What is good? What is poppin', everybody? Hope you're all having a great day. Today, I got a special video coming to you guys. Preseason for League of Legends is finally here. Preseason patch 11.23 is out, and it's going to have a bunch of new changes coming for the season coming up. Now, as you know, ranked season and all that stuff just ended in League, and so we got finally all these changes for the game coming. Now, this is all the official post from League itself. I'm going to leave a link for the description below so you guys can check it out yourself. But it has all the new changes with the dragons and item changes, rune changes, all these kind of things. So we're going to go over it. Going to give you guys my opinions and thoughts on it. Kind of give you guys some insight of what I think might be more powerful or stronger coming in the season. So before we get into that, though, you already know if you are enjoying this, make sure that thumbs up button helps me out a lot. Let me know you enjoy this kind of content. Subscribe if you haven't already. We got a great community going on over here, so why not be part of it? With all that said, guys, let's get right in the video. All right, so just like Rito's saying here, boom, baby, preseason 22 is here, and it is big. Now, it's a boast of new changes. Like I said, we're talking got stuff for dragons, items, runes, all that good stuff, so we're going to dive into it. Now, there is some stuff in this article that we're not going to cover, so you can check it out yourself, but there are some spoilers. There's some stuff talking about Arcane, which I don't want to spoil, and nothing we're spoil free here on this channel. It talks about the new, or the return, I should say, of the game mode, spellbook, and stuff like that. It talks a little bit about the TFT changes, which I'm actually going to do a video on about the update that's coming out for that, so make sure you check out for that. So we're going to go over mainly only the preseason changes here for the game. So moving on down here, as you can see, this is kind of like a pictograph talking about the patch highlights. Now, obviously, this doesn't go into the depths, doesn't give any details, but it's a nice little kind of infographic talking about, giving an overview about the stuff. Now, here's the arcane stuff that we're not going to talk about because we don't do spoilers here. Now, the first big thing here is going to be objective bounties. Now, I'm not going to read all these paragraphs. As you can see, I kind of read ahead of this, so I can give you guys a summary, so you don't have to spare you guys of reading and listening to all of me talking about all this stuff. But the objective bounties activate only when a team is sufficiently behind in objectives that'll pay out bounties are highlighted on the minimap for both teams. So as you can see here, there's a dragon, towers, and baron. Essentially, the way you can think about it, this is the team that's kind of behind. They're going to highlight on the map, and you're going to be able to maybe potentially achieve these objectives and get gold for it. Now, it says down here that objective bounties are calculated in the background based on the 4 factors: XP lead, gold lead, dragon lead, and turret lead. When they activate, each objective available to the team that's behind gains a bounty. Bounties start at the following, split evenly amongst all 5 team members. So, for Baron and Elder Dragon, you get 500 gold. Drakes and Rift Herald is also 500 gold. Outer turret, 250 gold. Inner turret, 400 gold. And base turret, 400 gold. Now, as far as the losing team falls farther behind, these base amounts can increase up to an additional 60%. This, the exact bounty for each reward will be visible under the losing team's objective icons in the tab menu. So, you know, when you press tab, you can kind of see when stuff's respawning or whatnot. It's going to kind of show it here. And so it's pretty clear for both teams to be able to see what objectives they are and how much they're worth. So it's a really clear indicator for both sides to understand this. And objective bounties activate 15 seconds after a team falls below the threshold and deactivate 15 seconds after they rise above it. The deactivation timer extends if the losing team remains in combat with an objective that has an active bounty. Overall, I think this is a really good change. We're going to have to see how big it impacts the game. I think it's actually going to have a pretty significant buff to the game, especially for those people behind. And as far as I know, and most people probably know, have been in situations where people want to forfeit a 15, and sometimes it's warranted because you have AFKs or whatnot, but sometimes people just think that there's no way to get back into it. And hopefully this kind of helps alleviate some of that, and you can potentially always try to get back into the game, or at least get gold to be able to get back into the game. So really, really nice change, I think, and I'm really excited to try this out. And moving on, there's some really big jungle changes. So if you haven't heard, there's 2 new drakes coming into the game. Let me tell you, they kind of dominate the other ones. I'm really excited to see these things, but it kind of sucks because I feel like the other ones aren't getting as much love. But either way, here are these drakes. So there's a Chemtech drake. Now this one is kind of about risk versus reward kind of thing. Now the buff you get is grants up to 5% bonus damage per stack against enemies with higher current health than you. So 340 to 1020 is like, you know, the more current health. It scales on level through 1 through 18. So that's pretty good. It gives you just bonus damage. But what the real kicker here is, I think, is the soul. Essentially, when a team obtains a Chemtech Dragon Soul, they receive a buff that grants to them a brief second life upon their next death. Champions will revive with 80% of their base health, plus 50% of their bonus health, and gain 75 to 30% melee versus ranged, respectively. Decaying move speed. Revived champions take 40% less damage, deal 33% less damage, and take damage equal to an ever-increasing percent of their starting health every 0.25 seconds. So there's a lot there, but essentially to break that down, if you think about it, it's like a Scion passive, right? When he dies, he respawns. Now, obviously, usually with full health and has like the ability to compress, but think of it that way. You get a second chance, essentially, to come back. Now, this is going to change the game entirely, in my opinion. If you think about team fights or even when you want 2v2s, it's going to completely change how it works, right? You're going to have prioritizing, differentiating between who's going to be able to respawn and who's not, and who's going to be a bigger threat respawn and who's not. Like it, 50% of your bonus health, so a tank is going to have a lot more health coming back than just an AD carry is. You take 40% less damage, you deal less damage. It's a really changing kind of game changer. But I think these numbers I would be surprised if they stay these exact ones. I'm sure through testing they're going to be a little bit changed, because these numbers are so arbitrary because we haven't tested it all and we don't know everything about it. But I think this is a fantastic change, and it's really cool to see that there is a kind of new way to play the game, right? Because this stuff, the other buffs are just kind of flat stats, or like staff sticks essentially. So you just get either more health regen or you get more damage and stuff like that. This really just kind of opens up and changes how the game is played, right? There's something that we haven't really seen other than just in Scion, and we already know that Sion's passive can be really kind of annoying, and then you add it to a whole team, it really changes the game, and I'm really excited to try this out. Now, obviously, with every dragon comes a way that the map changes, and for this one, the Chemical Rift, or the Chemtech Rift, gas zones emerge in 4 jungle locations that camouflage any champion within it. Champions within the zone deal up to 10% more damage to enemies who have more current health than them. Maximum damage is achieved at 340 to 1020 based on the attack level, less health than them. So essentially, kind of think of the buff that you get here, the bonus damage per stack for current health. It's kind of the same thing when you're in this kind of Chemtech chemical mist stuff, and you're invisible, you're camouflaged. When I think, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Twitch is a kind of an example of a camouflage where as soon as you get close to them, you can see them. It says here that camouflaged enemies are not revealed by regular vision wards, but are revealed by control wards, Squire's Bloom, and effects that reveal invisible units. They're also revealed when you're standing too near them. Overall, I think that's going to really change up the game. It's going to allow for more kind of ambush attacks. It's going to play a lot more trickery and kind of like deceiving and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see this. I think this is overall more hype than the Dragon Below, but I think the Hextech Dragon that we're about to talk about is also really impactful. But I think overall this is going to be a really great game changer, and I kind of want to see this Chemtech Drake in all my games. Really, it sounds just a lot of fun. Now, we'll say something about this that I kind of brushed over, but because I forgot to talk about it. But the selection rate of Chemtech and Hextech Rift terrains will be temporarily doubled during the patch. So essentially, you can expect to see these more often during the preseason, just so we can test them out and see it. It's not permanent, so before people start spamming, oh my god, it's broken, we're getting so much of this, I don't see any wind or ocean or whatever fire drag. It's intended, it's for people to test it. So moving on to the next dragon though, is the Hextech Drake. Now, can I also just say, these dragons in game, they look really sick. So I just need to say that they're really cool, and I really like that they're kind of adding to the kind of thematic of the league, rather than just being a fire or wind and kind of drag. They're actually making it like league themed, which I really like. So the Hextech Drake is a little bit more about control and kind of team fighting-esque things. So the buff you get is 5 ability haste and 5% attack speed per stack, which is, that's actually really good. It's most champions can benefit from one of these, if not both. So that's a really good thing. Now here, the Dragon Soul is pretty interesting. When a team obtains a soul, they gain Chain Lightning Slow on their next basic attack or ability that deals 25 to 75 true damage based on your level, bounces up to 3 targets, and slows units hit by 45 to 35% for melee and rage respectively, plus 5% per 100,000 bonus health, plus 1% per 100 AP, plus 3% per 100 bonus AD for 2 seconds and an 8-second cooldown. So essentially, they made sure that all kinds of manners of champions are going to be able to benefit this, whether you're tank or you have some AP or mage or AD or some sort. And it's really interesting. I think this is going to be really good in team fights particularly. Now obviously this doesn't change that much when it comes to like a 1v1 scenario, but in like even smaller scale skirmishes or 5v5 team fights is going to be really huge. It gives a lot of, gives you true damage first off, and then it also gives a huge slow that's going to scale with everybody essentially, and it's just going to be really, really useful. Now, what I think is actually a little bit more awesome than the Dragon Soul itself is this Hextech Rift. So the way that the Hextech Dragon changes the terrain. Pairs of Hex Gates appear across the map, which allow champions to quickly travel from one location to its paired counterpart. Hex Gates are activated with a brief channel that can be interrupted or by immobilizes or damage. Each pair of Hex Gates has a 30-second individual cooldown per champion. So think of like Rek'Sai tunnels almost in like a very basic sense, where you enter it and it comes out in one other place. And you can kind of see on this map here, there's 2 in each spawn, and there's 2 in each jungles, and 1 on each of the blue buffs, and 1 behind the dragon or baron pit respectively. And essentially you can take these and it takes you through there, right? It like ports you to those locations, and this is going to be obviously a game changer, right? This makes you be able to go from, you can like kind of, if you're getting pushed into your inhib or something like that, you can take this portal and try to backdoor them and get behind them. You can take these things to steal dragons and barons now, not have to worry about the blast cone, or you could use the blast cone, get in, and you can do a bunch of trickery here. If you're in blue buff and you want to try to steal the baron or dragon, also you have a way to get in. So it's a really, really great way, I think, to change the game. And that's what I really like about these dragons more than anything, is that it changes the way you play the game, right? They're not just stat sticks, they're not just like different kind of buffs you get or flat stats. They actually fundamentally change the game, the way the game is played, and I think that's really awesome, and I'm really excited to see these. Overall, I'm way more excited, in my opinion, for the Chemtech Drake. I also think it looks a little bit cooler, not gonna lie. But the Hextech Drake, especially the Hextech Rift, is going to be extremely cool to see how it plays out in the game, and I'm excited to see how it works out. Now, our ugly duckling, our stepchild, the Cloud Drake here, seems to they can't figure out exactly what they want to do with it, and it sucks, but it does seem that the Cloud Drake is going to change again for the buffs you get every time you kill it. Now, the soul and the rift, the way the trains change is not going to be changed. But the buff now, instead of giving you an ultimate ability, haste, you're going to get plus 30%, plus 3.5% out of combat movement speed, and plus 3.5% slow resistance. I don't know. I think first off, I think the other two dragons are going to overtake these older ones anyway. But needless to say, Cloud Dragon is one that we're always just kind of feel lackluster for, and I feel for it. I wish Cloud Dragon's a little bit better, but until they have some really big changes, I think Cloud Dragon's just going to not be that great. Rift Scuttler. Now, this is a pretty impactful change, I would say, for the junglers particularly, and for more top laners, mid laners than anything. I guess bot laners too, but I don't know how many times you've had this, but where early game, your junglers try to secure Rift Herald or Rift Scuttler, and they get mad because the other enemy jungler comes and you didn't come help them take it, or like your lane goes there, but it's because they pushed you in, you can't rotate to there. And it just caused a lot of friction, and some champions could do it better than others. So in this situation, what they're doing now is Rift Scuttle has been too impactful, and they're going to decrease the health it has so it can die quicker, so it's not as hard to kill. And it also is going to grant reduced 80% XP. So, and it's smaller in size, but you're going to be seeing a lot less priority, I think, early game with Rift Scuttler. Before this, Rift Scuttler was like the second or third camp that a jungler would take because it gave a good XP and good vision, and now it's just for vision. The XP is pretty much non-existent here. It's 80%. That's a huge nerf to that. It is, it's to say that it is easier to kill it, but the bonus XP you get from it is just so little now that you're just going to be using it for vision. And I feel like you might be seeing more laners actually killing this thing than junglers, and the laners are doing it just so they can get vision. But otherwise, I think this is a fine change. I think Rift Scuttler was pretty impactful to the game, and it also caused a lot of friction in the game. So I'm glad to see some change of this, but 80% seems really, really a big nerf. I would think that they might want to take this back to maybe 60%, something like that, but we're just going to have to see. Moving on to these new items. Now, there's a bunch of kind of AP items for mages, tanks, bruisers, assassins, all the way around. They just want to have more meaningful options for them. So moving into the AP ones first. So this is Crown of the Shattered Queen. Now, this is essentially going to think of it as like a Malzahar kind of void bubble that he has. It's 70 ability power, 250 health, 600 mana, and 20 ability haste. But the passive here is your safeguard. Reduce incoming damage by 75%, and it persists for 1.5 seconds after taking damage and has a 40-second cooldown. And it restarts when you take damage, right? So it's a way to kind of mitigate burst damage on mages. Now, you have this with Stopwatch, and you can have a lot of survivability, I think. Now, this is a pretty interesting change, and I think you're actually going to see this as a staple for most champions because it just helps so much with the not getting bursted down in, 1.5, right away, right? Now, it also has while safeguarded, and for 3 seconds after it's broken, you gain ability power based on your level. And the mythic passive grants 1% movement speed and 8 ability power. The movement speed is a little weird to me, but the 8 ability power is cool. But overall, I think this is going to be, I would say, a staple in majority of mage builds, along with Stopwatch, because it just gives so much survivability, and it makes it so the glass cannons it still gives 70 ability power. So it gives a fair amount of ability power, and it gives mana and ability haste. It's not just dead, weight. It gives you good stats, and it gives you huge survivability. So I think you're going to see this a lot. Moving on to Even Shroud. So this is kind of be like a tanky kind of item, and essentially it gives 200 health, 20 ability haste, 30 armor, and 30 magic resistance. So nothing crazy, right? But the really cool thing here is called Corsication. After mobilizing champions or being immobilized, cause that target and all nearby targets to repent, increasing the damage they take by 12% for 5 seconds. So this is going to be great on things like Amumu. This is going to be good on stuff like Alistair that can go in there and kind of CC a lot of people, and it's essentially just going to let your team to wombo combo and do a bunch of damage to them. So this is the reason why they're doing this, is because they felt like tanks were pigeonholed into the mythic item of Locket, and they wanted to add one that's more for offensively engaging. And the passive you get from this is legendary items give 5 armor and 5 magic resistance. So I think you get this item mainly for the immobilizing effect that you get here. The stats are fine, but they're nothing crazy. But I think this repent thing, you're going to see this a lot, especially in things like a Mumu, Alistair, Thresh, Braum. I think these are going to be really, really great items for tanks. Moving on to Axiomark. Now this is for an assassin item. Now they kind of talk about this, and it talks about it later down, about how essentially Yomu's Ghostblade was the go-to for most assassins, and a lot of assassins didn't even go for the mythic items that assassins were supposed to get. And so they're trying to make it more appropriate for assassins, and they're adding this item here. Essentially, you get 55 attack damage, 25 ability haste, and 10 lethality. But here, the passive Flux, whenever an enemy champion dies within 3 seconds after you damage them, refund 25% of your ultimate's total cooldown. So kind of think of like Lux's ult. When you ult and you kill somebody, it kind of refunds cooldown. This one isn't even if you've killed them. If you've damaged them at all, within 3 seconds, and they die, you get this back. So in like a team fight, say you hit 3 people with like some sort of AoE, and then you, like Talon ult, you go in there and you ult, and then you do a burst down one person, you get out of there, and then maybe 1 or 2 other people die from your team. You have 25 to 75% of your ultimate recharge, because it doesn't say here that there's a cooldown or anything with it. It just says that if someone's died within 3 seconds of you damaging them, you get 25% of your ults back. So this is going to be a staple. I would be surprised if this wasn't a second or third item staple for assassins. This is a really awesome change. I love the artwork to it too. The name's awesome. I think this is a really awesome ability to have in the game for assassins. I do think this might be a little strong. They might need to add a cooldown here. Maybe there is, and they just didn't put it in here. But I think this is going to be a really awesome item. Really check this one out. I think this is one of the better ones out of the items. Shadow Flame. This is a little interesting of an item in my opinion. It gives a hefty 100 ability power base and then 200 health. But this, the Cinder Bloom, damage to champion benefits gain from 10 to 20 magic penetration based on the target's current health, the maximum value at 1,000 or less, minimum value at 25 or more health. Gains the maximum magic penetration if the target was recently affected by shields. Essentially, this is going to help you try to burst more people down. It gives you some more ability, more penetration, right? It gives you a good amount of flat AP, but I think this is going to be a little bit more niche. This is like the shield stuff is always kind of a little bit more niche in my opinion. They have their uses, sure, but they're just niche, right? I'm glad that this is their arsenal to pick up for mages, but I think this is just more niche, and it's not going to be a staple as some of these other items that we're going to go over. Moving on to Winter's Approach. Now, if you were wondering as a tank why you never had a Muramana or an Archangels, well, here you go. So Winter's Approach, it says here, tanks who need mana can really struggle during teamfights as they slowly grind through their mana bars. Let the spell spamming commence. Thanks, Wild Rift. I don't play Wild Rift myself, so let me know if you guys know what this reference means, or if this even has a reference to it all, or they're just kind of being memey or something. But yeah, essentially tanks now have a Tear the Goddess kind of item to build into. So you start off with 400 health, 500 mana, 15 ability haste, and you gain bonus health equal to 8% of your mana. And the same thing, you charge it up like you would Muramana or Archangels, but the kind of evolved version is called Thimble Winter, and it gives 400 health, 860 mana, 15 ability haste, and you gain bonus health equal to 8% of your mana, so nothing really that different here, a little bit more extra stats, but this is the interesting part. Slowing melee only though, so this has nothing to do with ranged, or mobilizing an enemy champion, consumes 3% of current mana and grants a shield for 3 seconds, absorbing 100 to 200, plus 5% current mana, damage, 8-second cooldown. The shield is increased by 80% if more than one enemy is present. So essentially, it's kind of like it's in a way a Blitzcrank thing, right? Where when he gets down below, his mana essentially gets converted into a shield. Think of it kind of like that. So you can kind of go in there. I could see this on a lot of champions actually, and especially that the shield gets increased by 80% or more if there's more enemies nearby. So in a team fight, just the base 80% of this, that goes from 200 to almost 400, right? It's like 300 and I don't know, 60, 70 if my math is quick maths, right, is correct. That's a huge base shield, plus 5% of your current mana, and then 80% more of that. So that's just like a really, really great shield, and it's on a 3-second cooldown. It's a really good item. It's going to be a little bit more niche though, because as we know, tier items, while good, they're only good on specific champions, and they're really good on those specific champions, but they're more niche and specific to certain champions. So I think a lot of tanks are gonna test this out and try to see who it works on best. But I think there will find some champions that are going to be kind of useless and stable, I think, because this is pretty useful, right? It gives you mana, which all tanks need. Everyone needs more mana, right? If they use mana, because lets you use more abilities, stay in fights longer, but then you also get a shield for it. So I'm really interested to see how this comes out and what champions actually come out for it. If I had to guess, tankier supports are going to be kind of liking this. I could see like Braum, Thresh, but the only problem is that like you obviously have to build it up, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to figure out exactly which ones can do it well, but I think that people are going to find it. Moving on to some tank items now, they're kind of changing how all tank mythic items work. They're kind of upset that essentially you just burned stuff, and they wanted to change that a little bit. So Bounty Center, the base, essentially now you can execute minions if they would be killed by one more tick of Immolate, so it's just a little bit of quality of life thing for CSing for tanks. Frostfire Gauntlet is a little bit unchanged. You do get basic attacks create a frost shield for 1.5 seconds that deal 200 to 100, plus 0.5% of your max health damage to all enemies in area. Enemies are then slowed in the field. Immolate passive unchanged and Mythic passive unchanged. Not anything super crazy for Frostfire. A little bit better because you get a little bit of damage here now. But the Turbo Chem Tank has a really awesome change that I think we're going to see a lot in some particular champions. So this one is now moving and dealing damage fills up the Chem Tank. At 100 stacks, your next basic attack deals 40 to 120 plus 1% of your max health plus 3% of your move speed. Magic damage to all nearby enemies. Increased 25 against minions, 175 against jungle monsters. So think of this as like a Deadman's chest or Deadman's plate, right? Where you kind of, the more you move, it stacks up. Then once you get to 100, it does something. This one does some good damage. It doesn't slow, but it is a pretty good amount of damage, plus 1% of your max health. This plus 3 move speed, I think this is really catered to particular champions, cough cough Hecarim, but it's an interesting little thing to scale off of. But what's cool is that it will scale off of the supercharged active, so that's unchanged. So that's still the the burst movement speed you get running towards turrets or enemy champions. So you get that, and then you do more damage because that technically does give you more move speed. The Immolate passive is no longer here, but the Mythic passive empowers, and you get 5 ability haste and 50 health. So I think that you're going to see this a lot. I can see this on Singe. I can see this on Hecarim. I can see this on a couple other, like Volibear even maybe. So I'm interested to see this. This is going to be a really cool item and I think a lot of champions are going to be using this one mainly. Sunfire Aegis, more or less unchanged. They added a little bit more armor and magic resistance because they wanted to have stats equal to what they thought it was worth. And the only thing added to the Mystic passive is now you get 50 health too per item, which is a nice quality of life change here. Abyssal Mask is another big change here. This one is increased 50 health, 10 ability haste, and the magic resistance is lowered from 60 to 30, so halved. But the passive now, instead of getting the extra damage if you immobilize something, you curse nearby enemy champions, reducing their magic resistance by 5, plus 1% of your bonus health, max 20. For each cursed enemy, you gain 7 magic resistance. So if you think about this, think of this almost like a pseudo Wit's End, but for tanks, right? Now, Wit's End, you essentially take magic resistance from them and you give it back to yourself. This one, it reduces theirs by it scales, right? Plus 1% per your bonus health, max 20. So you can take 20 magic resistance away from somebody. But for each one, you get a flat amount of 7. So if you take away from all 5, you'll get 35 magic resistance, right? If you're around all 5 champions, and you could take out a lot up to 20 from all those other champions. So this is going to be a really good item. I can see a lot of stuff coming in for like a Mumu here. I was talking about him earlier. A Mumu I think is going to make a big surge. I think he's already really good in this game before all this. And I think a lot of these items are kind of coming to make him be really good. He's like, I think one of the biggest winners out of all these. There's another couple items that I'm going to talk about that have Mumu's name on them. But this is going to be a really good item, I think, for a lot of champions coming out. Force of Nature, it got changed again pretty substantially. So magic resistance increased by 10 for just 70 now. Move speed is unchanged, but the absorb now, instead of you getting like the taking ability damage grants bonus move speed and magic resistance stacking up to 5 times, now taking damage from enemy champions grants a stack of steadfast max 6 for 5 seconds, and enemy immobilizing effects give you an additional 2 stacks. When you hit 6, you take 20% reduced magic damage and 10% increased movement speed. So the reason why I said it changed massively is because before it was kind of a ramped up thing, right? Like even if you only did it 1 or 2 seconds, you got a little bit extra movement speed and magic resistance for only being in 2 seconds. Now you don't get anything until you hit 6 seconds, but once you hit 6 seconds, you hit a huge like spike of getting these resistances and this movement speed. So it's going to be kind of we're going to have to see how this gets played out. I think it's still going to be picked up a lot, but it's going to be a way different way I think you play the item, right? Because now you have to make sure you're in it for the thick of it to actually get the benefit. You can't just trade and get, the movement speed and magic resistance by being in combat for 2 or 3 seconds. You have to be in for the full 6 seconds or whatever of getting attacked, and then you can get the benefits. So it's just a different way you play it. Knight's Vow got a pretty interesting change. So now the sacrifice, while your worthy ally, the person you're attached to, is nearby, you redirect 10% of the damage they take to you and heal 8% of the damage they deal to champions. If they have less than 30% health, you redirect 20% of the damage they take to you instead. So I think this is really cool. I think Knight's Vow is already good for tanks, and it kind of lets you kind of take the brunt for your chosen ally or whatever. But now you also get something out of it, right? You can take it and then you also heal. So there's like a 2% differentiation right here, right? They take 10%, but you heal 8%, so it's about 2%. Now, obviously, it's like they could do a lot more damage. I'm not trying to say it's exactly 2%, but like it is comparable, right? You can take a lot of damage, and you'll also, hopefully, as long as the person you're putting on is a good carry or actually being competent, you're going to be able to mitigate a lot of the damage you take by them healing. So I think this is a really great change for tanks, something that I think a lot of tank supports are going to be really, really happy about. Aegis, Gargoyle, and Stoneplate, they just got some price changes, down 100, down 100, and then up 100. Now, moving on to some mage items. Now, like I said, this is going to be a long video, and if you guys are going to stick with me through the end, I appreciate it. There's just a lot of stuff in here, so I want to make sure I go over everything with you guys. So if you guys are still here, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. It helps me a lot, and I appreciate you guys still being here. Just want to give a quick little shout out, take a little breather break, and I know there's been a lot of information, and just want to take a little breather. Now that we're back, moving on to Everfrost. So Everfrost, they kind of wanted to change it a little bit. Ability power of base went up here, right, from 60 to 70, and the mythic passive now gets 15 ability power to 10 ability power. Nothing crazy here. Demonic Embrace, though, is a huge one, and like I was talking about Amumu, right? My boy Amumu is going to be coming in. I promise you, he's going to be making a big entrance in this. So you get less flat ability power by 10. You get more health, Amumu. And you still get the Arcana's Gaze, right? Where you deal, you burn enemies 2% for melee, 1.2 for range, max health every second, right? But it no longer grants bonuses resistances. What it does, though, is 2% of your bonus health as ability power. So Amumu already has some decent scaling on his abilities. And people do play Grenade Amumu, right? Where you build full AP and you can one-shot people. So now if you build tank, you can still do a lot of damage here. And then, this ability power turns into you doing more damage with the passive here, with your abilities, all this stuff. So this is I think you're going to be seeing a lot of Amumu coming out, and I think there's going to be a pretty kind of streamlined build for what he's going to be going. And I promise you it's going to be strong. This is an awesome change. This is, also good for other ones too, right? It gives like a Malzahar a little bit of survivability because he gets a little bit extra health, and the health is converted into ability power. So I think it's good overall. Archangel Staff is another huge item that I'm super excited about. I missed back in my day. I've been playing League for a while, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but Woda, Will the Ancients, was an item that was loved and hated by all. It worked on really good on certain champions and really bad on others, and they took it out. And I've always wondered if they were going to bring anything back in, and it seems like they're kind of pseudo bringing this back in, and I'm pretty happy about it. So Archangels, as we know, used to be the kind of scaling ability power mana item. And that's like completely changed now. So you still stack it with tier, right? That's not really changed. And you get a little bit less ability power. You get a little bit of health here. The mana you get base is unchanged. But now, instead of getting ability power based off of your mana, you get ability haste equal to 0.5% of your bonus mana. Okay, so it changes a little bit there. And then moving on, it goes up to 1.3% bonus mana for ability haste once it gets evolved. You get 50 extra health, and you get actually more ability power when it gets transformed, right? But now the Seraph's Embrace, instead of increasing your maximum mana by 5%, plus, whatever per AP you have, now you restore health equal to 40% of the mana spent up to 25 to 50 plus 10% ability power per cast. That is so cool, right? That's so thematic, and I really like that. I'm excited to try this on like Victor. There's going to be places like Cassident. Like these are going to be really great changes, I think. And it's cool because it lets you have a little bit more of a trading kind of champion. Now I'm going to cry a little bit and pay my respects for Rumble for a second, because Rumble was somebody that kind of liked Woda back in the day. And now, you could build this, but it would obviously be obsolete because you can't use mana on Rumble. But it's still cool nonetheless to see this coming back in. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and actually pretty good on some champions. Moving on to Cosmic Drive, they changed this a little bit, so you get a little bit less ability power, you get more health, you get more ability haste, and you get 5% move speed. And now, instead of just if you have 160 ability power and you gain, ability haste and move speed, Now, if you damage a champion with 3 separate attacks or spells, you grant 20% movement speed, decaying up to 10%, and 40 ability power until leaving combat. So think of this kind of like Halo Blades, right? You go in, you see 3 separate attacks, and you get something out of it. Now, what I think this is really cool about this is it's a pretty hefty movement speed, right? 20% move speed and 40 ability power until you leave combat. So this is going to be used for a lot of champions. I think Singe is going to like this one a lot, right? Because his poison kind of keeps him in combat, right, for a long time, and he's going to continue to get this. I think this is going to be a really good item on certain champions. Now, I think it does lose a little bit of general purpose use, because before, if you just had ability power, you got ability haste and some movement speed, and now that you have to be able to, reliably proc those 3 separate attacks and make use of the 20% movement speed, because you are going to, like, the reason why you're doing it is mainly for the movement speed. The 40 ability power is nice, right? But the movement speed is like a big one to it. Moving on to Horizon Focus, they just changed it a little bit here. They make it so you got 30 reduced AP based off of this, but you got 150 health out of this and 15 ability haste to kind of compensate for that. And now the hyper shot, which is you do 10% or whatever more damage the farther away the target is, or up to 800 meter, whatever it is. They're changing that. I think they essentially didn't want it to be a Glass Kennedy build, and they wanted to have it be a little bit more kind of all-purpose for more mages to pick up and feel good about it. Void Staff change, pretty simple. They reduce the AP you get, and they wanted to increase the magic pen you get. They wanted to make sure that this was what that item was for. It's mainly for shredding people rather than just giving a flat amount of AP. Doran's Ring, I think, is actually a pretty cool change here. The reason why I think this is pretty substantial is because it's early game, right? It changes how the early game is played, because there's Doran's Ring, Doran's Shield, Doran's Blade, and Doran's Ring change here is pretty massive, right? So the but if you damage an enemy champion, so if you trade, it increases to 1.25 every second for 10 seconds. So you get like a 50% increase if you duel. And then if you can't gain mana, you gain 50% of the value as health instead. So this is going to be really good. It's going to kind of help people with trading in the game, and hopefully it helps with people that usually if somebody went in, they chose not to trade back is because they wanted to make sure they could farm the minions, because that's actually how they got the mana or health or whatever. Now they can actually trade back, do a little bit of damage, and actually get something back for it, get some health back, get some mana back, whatever it is. So this is a really cool change. These numbers, I assume they're probably going to be tweaked a little bit, but I think this is a really good baseline. This is a really exciting change to see. Hextech Alternator, you get less ability power, you get a little bit of health here, and Rocket Belt and Night Harvester kind of are changed, compensating the Hextech Alternator build, essentially. Lethality items. Now, moving on, this is some they're big changes, but they're not at the same time. Essentially, they're making them cheaper across the board. Duskblade, Eclipse, and Prowler's Claw are all 100 gold cheaper, and essentially they're buffed, right? None of them are substantially changed. They're just giving buffs to these items because they want assassins to go for these items rather than Gore Drinker or Stridebreaker. So Duskblade is getting 10 plus more base damage and 5% more bonus AD. Eclipse, the cooldown for melee champions reduced from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. And Prowler's Claw, the dash does 10 more base damage and 5% more bonus AD damage. And Yomu's Ghostblade is increased by 100 gold. So I think they're hoping that you get one of these items first as your main item. Then either you do the Yomu's Ghostblade or the Axiom Blade that we were talking about earlier. And I think they're trying to make sure that assassins use the assassin items and that they're actually rewarded for using them. Moving on now, we're getting close, guys, and I appreciate you guys hanging out here. If you guys are still for the end of this video, or getting close to the end of this video, it's a long video, I know, but I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. This next one is actually a pretty big change up. Now we're going to talk about it real quick because we're just going to talk about this. Rest in peace to Omnistone. I don't know about you guys. I never used this keystone. I didn't have any feelings towards it. If you did, I'm sorry, but it is gone from the game. They have completely taken it out of the game. Who knows? Rito, I was gonna say Rito and League. They bringing stuff back in or taking stuff away. Force of Nature is a great example of that. But what's replacing Omnistone and the Inspiration Tree is this First Strike. So essentially, it's almost like a old Klepto, but better, right, and more consistent. So First Strike is going to be basic attacks or abilities against an enemy champion within 0.25 seconds of entering champion combat, grants 5 gold and First Strike for 3 seconds. And First Strike causes you to deal 10% extra damage against champions and grants 100%, 70% for ranged, of bonus damage dealt as gold. 25 to 15 second cooldown, levels 1 to 18. Now, if an enemy strikes you first, First Strike still goes on cooldown without providing any of its bonuses. Unlike Banshees, Veil, subsequent damage won't keep restarting the cooldown. So, to kind of break this down, essentially think of it this way. If you trade first, if you go in and you do damage first, you will get 5 base gold plus 10% of the extra damage. You get plus 10% bonus damage, and then that bonus damage you do gets converted to gold. So it's a really good, I think that the higher skill player that uses this, the more it's going to be useful, because it's going to be able to kind of figure out, the real windows to make use of this. I think this is going to be a really high skill cap, high reward kind of ability, which I like. Oh, Klepto. I don't know if you guys remember. Pretty much the only people that ever take it was like Ezreal and GP, and it was just like, it was either super good or super not good. And so this is more consistent and actually rewards good gameplay skills, in my opinion. Now, I think it's probably, these numbers are definitely going to be changed over the course of the preseason, because these are just so, like, it's we've never seen something really like this and how it works. So we're gonna, maybe they give you more damage but less than, like, you don't get all 100%. But overall, right now, it's a really great keystone, and I'm going to try it on a lot of different champions. I think a lot of champions could benefit from this. I think this is definitely an early game to mid game rune. It's not late game necessarily. It can get you to late game quicker, but obviously once you hit all your items, the gold doesn't do much for you. You still get the 10% bonus extra damage, but obviously you have it still is like the prerequisites of getting into the combat first before they damage you. And if you, the flip side of this is that if they do damage you first, if your opponent knows that you have this and they're always constantly trying to auto attack you or stuff like that, this is obviously, you're not going to get this. And I think this is going to be really hard in matchups for ranged versus melee. If you are going into a ranged versus melee matchup and you're the melee, I probably wouldn't take this, because you're going to find it really hard to get this, because the ranged person is going to be able to poke you and put this on cooldown. So I think this is a really cool rune, but it's definitely a more skill oriented. Like I said, Omnistone is out of the way. Glacial Augment got a pretty interesting change. Immobilizing an enemy champion will cause 3 glacial rays to emanate from them towards you and other nearby champions, creating frozen lines for a few seconds that slow enemies for 35%, plus 5% per 10% heal shield power, 2% for 100 AP, 2% per 100 bonus AD, and reduce their damage by 15% against your allies. Now you're including yourself. Frozen lines last for 3, plus 100% of the final duration of the immobilizing effect, seconds. So a lot of words here. Essentially, think of it, if you guys remember what GLP was, essentially it was like a hextech item that could shoot out like little ice shards, and if you had this with it, it would make a beam, like a line that kind of slow people. Now you can do this without having this item. I think this is going to be a good item. I think it's going to be a lot more situational, and certain champions are going to use it really well, and it's going to be kind of lackluster in others. I think Senna is still going to be really good with this item. I know that some people are a little worried because it's maybe a little bit less reliable because you have to immobilize a champion, but I think that it's going to be a really good change, and I think it helps prevent some cheese, right? Because if a Senna gets ahead in the game with the Glacial Augment and stuff like that, it can be kind of hard to deal with it. And I think they're trying to make it a little bit more fair, and they're making it across the board right now. So supports can do this, mages can get it, and even like assassins or ADs are going to be able to benefit from this because it scales off all that stuff. So a cool change nonetheless. I think one of my favorite actual changes, though, of the runes, besides First Strike here, is this Lethal Tempo. Now, Lethal Tempo is obviously one of the precision trees, as we know, and it's kind of just, it's good, but you don't see a lot of people using it. You mainly see like Kog'Maw using it more than anything. Now, what Lethal Tempo does now is, you after 1.5 seconds upon damaging an enemy champion, you gain bonus attack speed, and your attack speed is cap is increased, and yeah. So this one now, you gain 15% for melee, 5% for range, attack speed for 6 seconds when striking at least one enemy champion with each auto attack. So that's important to note. That means that it's not just the same champion, right? Like press the attack, you have to do the same champion 3 times. So this is any champion, but the effect stacks up to 6 times. While the effect is at its cap, you gain 50 for melee, 100 for range, attack range, and increase your attack speed cap from 2.5 to 10 seconds, to 10, I mean. That is crazy. That is a really, really crazy good change, I think. And I think this is going to be taken on a majority of marksmen. I would be surprised if people didn't. I mean, think about this. You get 100 more increased range. Something like Vayne that already focuses on more attack speed heavy builds because of the way her W works. And you increase her range by 100. And you can increase your attack speed cap to 10. That means 10 attacks per second. That is crazy, right? If you're doing like a Ginsu's build and you're at full stacks, that means you're going to proc Ginsu's 5 times the double, the double attack thing in 1 second. If you could get to 10, I don't actually know if it's possible to get to 10. Let me know if you guys know if it's possible to get to 10 attacks per second. I'm assuming it has to be for them to put it in the game, but it's just, I think this is going to be a really, really good. And to be honest, it might be a little too good. They might need to nerf it a little bit, but I think this is a really, really great change for marksman. I know a lot of people have been hating on marksman and people who our AD carries have been saying they've been in a bad spot for a couple of years. I think this is going to be a huge, really great change to kind of help them out for sure. So moving on, this is just a spell book. This is that game mode that I was telling you guys, but I'm not going to go too much into that because, again, this video is long enough as it is. But one thing I did want to talk about here is all chat. So based on the initial results, since they originally disabled all chat in a few regions in patch 11.21, they're continuing to disable where it's already in effect, but we're not adding additional regions. From here on out, we'll message any per region changes to impacted regions only unless we've got global updates to share. So it does seem that they're kind of still on all chats being disabled kind of thing. They don't want it, but they're not adding any additional regions. So if your region has it now, it's not going to change. And if you don't have it now, as of right now, you don't have to worry about it getting disabled. So that's just one thing I wanted to kind of end it on. And then end of season rewards, if you don't know, you're going to be able to collect your end season rewards, and they should be completed by December 16th, but based off of this. And I think that's going to do it, guys. Now, if you guys are still here to the end of the video, I really appreciate you guys. Let me know in the comment section down below, because I will super like or highlight or whatever I can do, because that's really awesome, and I want to show you guys support for supporting me. This is a really long video, and if you watched it all the way to the end, shout out to you. You guys are awesome. Hopefully you took this and you guys have some really cool, exciting things to think about for preseason. You're hyped for it. I know I am. I'm going to try. I can't wait to try so many things in this for preseason. Let me know down in the comment section below what you guys are going to be trying out, what you're excited about to try it. Oh, I already said that. Whoa, this has just been a long video. My brain's getting a little fried. But I do want to know what items you guys are excited to try out on, what champions, what runes you think are going to be good, your overall thoughts on this. Do you think, what about the new Drakes? How impactful do you think going to be this objective bounties? I want to hear it all down below, so let me know. Like this video if you guys haven't already. It really helps me out. It gets out to more people. Subscribe if you haven't already. We got a really great community growing on over here. And like I said, we got a lot of gaming content coming in the future. I've been doing a lot of New World. We're doing some League, Apex, TFT, everything. I'm going to be pretty much making content and whatever I want, because I love all games and I hopefully can bring value to all you guys. So, with all that being said, guys, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Until next time, take it easy.